Hey guys, I hope you all are doing great. So, welcome to the next episode of the HID podcast. So, today I've got a good friend of mine with me. I've got Avinash with me, who is currently working in M&A Tax with PwC, which is one of the big fours. So, this is a really, really important podcast, guys, because as all of you are aware, M&A Tax is a very niche domain, and only a handful of people get to do articleship in this domain. So, if you're someone who's probably not done articleship in M&A Tax, but you're looking to get into M&A Tax post qualification, this is probably one podcast that you've definitely got to check out. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So, the floor is yours, Avinash. So, over to you. A quick intro about you, if you can just say that to the audience.
Yeah. So before I say something about myself, I just want to thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know, I met Arvind, I think, when we were studying for our CA intermediate at SmartLearn. So ever since then, like he's been a really good friend of mine, and we've been able to connect on so many topics. And he's just doing so much for the student community. So I think whoever whoever is following his channel is really lucky to have his inputs. So just a little about myself. I'm Avinash. So I'm from Chennai. I was born in Chennai, brought up here as well. But I speak Kannada at home. So I cleared my CA final in Jan of this year, and I joined PwC in April. I'm working for the M&A tax team, and yeah, so far it's been going good.
Great, great. Thank you, Avinash. Thank you for your compliment. That's great to hear. So, on to the next question. So, very, very cliched question again. Why M&A tax? Why not any other domain?
Yeah, so to be very honest, I did my articleship at the mid-size firm. I did it at Brahmaya and Co. So there I was fully in the audit domain. But the thing is, in my team, we were doing audits for a lot of, small private companies. So we were doing basically everything for them, from the audit to filing their tax audit reports, filing their ITRs, and even their transfer pricing reports. So in that sense, I got a decent insight into how the tax domain is, and it interested me a lot. So, and what helped further was, while I was studying for my CA final, I could really connect with the subject a lot more after reading the theoretical parts of it. So this got me interested. And to be honest, I learned a lot in audit, but at some point I felt that tax was, very technical, and it really interested me. So that's why I moved into tax. And why particularly M&A tax is, the other option would usually be CIT, that is
Right,
corporate and international tax.
right.
There it has a lot to do with, litigations and responding to assessments and all that, which I felt personally was a little monotonous and didn't really interest me. Whereas the M&A tax had, a lot of structuring work as such. So, so I thought, okay, why not? Let's try it.
Right, agreed. Because in M&A tax, you're going to be structuring the deal from scratch, which is like literally the heart of the deal. So, completely agree with you. On the same page with you.
Yeah.
So, on to the next question. So, what skill set do you think someone needs to get into M&A tax? And as you were earlier saying, you are not from an M&A tax background because you were mostly into stat audit in your articleship and you had seen a bit of tax here and there, but not completely. So, what do you think it takes for someone to get into M&A tax post qualification? What are the skill sets do you think that someone probably needs to develop or refine to get into M&A tax post qualification?
What I observed in my team is that, many people who continue in tax have also done their articleship in tax.
Right.
So I think the vast majority, say 80 to 85%, post qualification, they just continue and go further in tax as well. But for me, since I made the switch from audit to tax, it was a little difficult initially because, I didn't have the working knowledge of, making submissions to the department or even visiting the department for that matter.
Right.
But what helped was, while I was studying for my CA final, I was able to get a lot of knowledge and relate to the subject really well. I had a great teacher as well. So that, and I started to slowly read, like case laws and rulings, just the major ones that were, appearing in the newspaper or it came on my Google feed.
Great.
Nothing too much or nothing too much in particular. So, and post my exam also, I was just doing a bit of tax reading because every year there's a finance act and the budget comes out. So I was just tracking that and, just keeping myself up to date. Nothing too much, but definitely you need to have a knowledge of what's going on around you if you want to get into tax.
Right. So I think basically being intrigued by stuff that's going on is, I think, the way forward.
Yeah.
That is something you probably need to have. And I believe, as you were earlier saying, a good fundamental into your income tax CA finance syllabus would also probably help you in like relating with the work. It would be a good starter for sure. But from then on, your working knowledge would probably take over. I get that. Yeah. So on to the next question, Avina. So how does a day typically look for you in PwC and M&A tax? Like what do you do as a part of your role, and what are the responsibilities you're probably assigned, and what can someone expect to do when they enter M&A tax as a qualified CA?
So just a disclaimer before I say anything, since I've joined only in April, I only have about like,
Sure,
5 months experience.
sure, sure.
But from whatever I've seen, there's a lot of, tax due diligence work that we do. So since we're part of M&A Tax, the FDD team has a lot of deals coming their way on a regular basis.
Right.
The tax portion of that, they outsource it to us. So we help them with that, and we coordinate with the client directly, exchange information, and we prepare a report in the form of a slide deck, and that's how we present it to them.
Right.
So apart from tax due diligence, I have done a couple of structuring assignments as well. So
Right.
if I had to give you an example, a company would come to us and say that they want to form a JV with another foreign company,
Right.
and they'll ask us what the complaints issues are, and we won't advise them only from an income tax standpoint. So we also bring in a lot of FEMA and SEBI regulations if the company is listed. So in that sense, you would have to know a lot about FEMA, SEBI, and other allied laws as well. So structuring work is the other major thing. And there are clients who come to us for opinions before undertaking a transaction. Like,
Right.
for example, if they want to, remit money to the shareholders, what would be the best way of doing it, the most tax efficient way, whether through a dividend or a buyback, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what a typical day looks like. Of course, it won't be so interesting on a daily basis, but when you do get such an assignment, it's pretty interesting.
Right, agreed. So I think, Avinash, maybe if this gets good reception, we can probably do a part two also where you can probably even elaborate on your experiences further, and you can probably even refine your understanding of the field even better so that the viewers also get even more clarity. I think that is something which we can probably do later on. Yeah.
Sure, I'll be
So,
happy to.
yeah, sure. So on to the next question, Avinash. So like, what were the interview questions that were probably asked in your PwC interview in M&A Tax? If you can just probably elaborate on that.
Yeah, so in my interview process, I had two rounds. The first round, I was interviewed by a manager, and the second round I was interviewed by a partner. The questions they asked, the first round was, basically they asked me what my background is. And I was very honest with them. Like, this is also just one point I feel everyone should know that they usually ask you what your experience is. And it's crucial that you're truthful about it because I didn't have any background in FEMA or SEBI.
Right.
So I clearly told them that and said my, working knowledge is restricted to income tax. And they don't, they understand it because, not everyone has experience in all fields. And they question you based on whatever you tell them.
Right.
It started off with them asking me about my articleship experience, and they asked me whether I came across any interesting things while I was doing audits. And I spoke to them about what I did while filing the tax audit reports, income tax returns, and I mentioned a couple of particular areas and they questioned me regarding that. So this is with respect to my experience. And then they had a few general questions as well. Like they gave me a situation where a company is, issuing rights shares and they asked me to calculate the post rights market price of the share.
Right.
One more question was regarding, this thing where they gave me a hypothetical situation where there's a company and they want to remit money abroad. They have excess cash and they want to remit the money to their shareholders. And they asked me what would be the most efficient way of doing this.
Right.
So in that situation, you'd have to think of the different ways like buyback, dividend, capital reduction, etc., whatever it
Right.
is. And also, you need to be familiar with all the tax rates for non-residents and foreign companies as well. So considering all that, you need to give them an answer. They also questioned me about things like, deductions. Like they said that a company has a lot of employees and they incur huge employee costs. What are the, options or deductions available to them? And I spoke about ATJJ and
Yeah.
those related deductions.
Right.
The next round was a little trickier because that was a partner round, and they expect you to be really familiar with 56 to 10 since it's a very nuanced topic and there's a lot of rulings and case
Right.
laws based on that. And even for and of course the obvious area of mergers, demergers, and amalgamations and their tax neutrality conditions that need to be satisfied. And also capital gains is another really important area where I was questioned on capital gains with respect to a partnership firm. So I would say that you need to have a good all-round knowledge, not particularly in depth, but you should be able to at least start answering. You should have a good enough background to, just show them the way you're thinking.
Right. So I think what I could probably take out of this is first thing, it's better to underplay it. Don't set the bar too high if you don't have a background in tax. So I think that is setting out an expectation to the interviewer that okay, this person does not have a hands-on experience, but okay, he has studied CFIL, he's passed CFIL, so he has that knowledge. Let's dig into that knowledge and let's test him on that. That is one thing which I probably took out of this. And the second thing which I feel is that okay, you should have an idea of the provision, you should have an understanding of the provision, and you should be able to apply it in a given context. as to why this would apply or why this would be a better alternative or why this wouldn't be feasible. I think applying it to the scenario would be really good because obviously no interviewer is going to ask you to compute the total income or no interviewer is going to give you a PGBP question. Obviously, they're going to see how you're applying it to the scenario. I think that is something which you can probably practice because obviously you can prompt ChatGPT and you can ask it also to give you such questions in the nature of what we just discussed right now. And I think that would be a good exercise you can do probably before your interview. Like that would help you refine your analytical skills with respect to tax as a field because I feel in tax in our CF final, yes, we are tested analytically to an extent, but not to this extent. So I feel drilling down there would be better is what I could take out of this. I think that was a good insight for me. So on to the last question, Avinash. So what do you think are the exit routes for someone after like working in a big four in a client facing role in M&A tax? Like how are the industry prospects for M&A tax and where can someone expect to land after this?
Okay, I would say that tax is a very not a very but definitely a niche area in itself because usually once people come into the tax domain, they end up continuing there. People who are really committed will end up becoming managers, senior managers, and eventually partners. And like I said, many of the people who are in the tax domain have done their articleship also in tax. So that's pretty much like a straight line trajectory for them. While I wouldn't say that switching from tax to any other domain is impossible,
Mhm.
but I feel that it's definitely better to do it within the first few years
All right.
because once you get a little deep into it, you become really experienced in tax. But when if you want to move into another field like audit, FTD, FP&A, or whatever, they usually expect people who are younger and faster,
Great.
people who have knowledge of what's happening around them. But if you're into tax for like 5 to 6 years and you just want to make a blind switch into any other stream, that would be a little difficult for sure. If you want to do it, definitely, I think because you will get an idea in the first 2 or 3 years as to how the work is and what you'll end up doing.
All right. Agree.
Based on that, you could take a decision. And even if you don't want to go into another field, you could always go into the industry and become the tax manager for any of the companies because many companies require good in-house tax experts who will help them with tax planning and all that. So that is another route. But as far as I know, and based on what I've seen, people usually end up continuing in tax.
Agreed, agreed. I think this would have given a perspective to the people on the way forward after you probably work on the work facing the client, like what is available post that. I think this would have given a good insight to people. So I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much, Avinash, for coming up on the podcast. It really means a lot. Thank you for taking your time out and coming on the podcast. I hope it was helpful for everyone. If you have any doubts, feel free to reach out to Avinash. So I'm just pinning his LinkedIn ID in the comments, so you can probably reach out to him in case you have any doubts specifically with regard to M&A tax, and you can also feel free to reach out to me. So I hope you guys found this podcast insightful, guys. So wishing you the best. Keep learning, keep growing, and any closing comments that you want to add on us with regard to the podcast.
Nothing much. I just once again thank you so much, Arvind, for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope to collaborate on other videos or any ideas that you might have in the future. And for those of you watching, and if you want to get any other insights or you want some ideas about how the tax domain works, please feel free to reach out to me through my LinkedIn handle that Arvind will be sharing. Thank you so much once again, Arvind.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Keep learning, keep growing, and wishing you the best. And do feel free to reach out to us in case you have any doubts. Right. So thank you.